welcome to Mbogi ya MaWriters from the Multimedia Library of the Alliance Française de Nairobi. Soyez les bienvenus. And allow me to sit down. Done. We are here to witness yet another historic online launch, this time of a book entitled Cocktail from the Savannah. And I would let you know that the author has also written Nairobi Cocktail and Immigrant Cocktail. And she is sitting social distancingly from me. Welcome to Mbogi ya MaWriters, Ciku, Kimani, Mwaniki.
Thank you.
Did I pronounce your name in true Gikuyu fashion?
Yeah, you did say Kiko, so that's fine.
Thank you, that's a good start. Yeah. I've done my preparation. Ciku, I wish to draw you by and by on the specific topics of plot and characterization for the writer. But let's get to that slowly. Since I must confess that I'm yet to read the prior two titles, why the word cocktail in every one?
Cocktail. The simple answer would be because I can't work with one single character. I can't blow up a character and let the character shine much more than the others. So I find myself working with multiple lead characters. And I think life is a cocktail. So I just find the word cocktail describing every situation. And I love it.
So your ultimate desire is to write 100 cocktails? Cocktail from the Masai Mara, cocktail from London, cocktail, cocktail, cocktail?
Yeah, everything. I can say that every title I will have a cocktail in it.
So tell me about Immigrant Cocktail. Do we have the same characters featuring in each one?
Absolutely not. Every book is independent. All characters are for that particular book.
So what were you sort of dealing with Immigrant Cocktail?
Trying to tell the real story of what happens there. There meaning outside Kenya, abroad, Maju, whatever Kenyans call it. And we have people thinking that it's really the land of milk and honey. It's not for a lot of people. And unfortunately, people don't talk about what happens there because they're afraid of looking like failures. They're afraid of people knowing that they made wrong decisions by leaving their well-paying jobs here and leaving the country. So what I did with Immigrant is I took real stories but used fictional characters to tell those stories. So the stories in the Immigrant Cocktail are real. It's just the characters are fictional.
Well, we'll return to that. Mm-hmm. Nairobi Cocktail?
Nairobi Cocktail. Nairobi Cocktail, I started writing it when I was in London. And it was Christmas and I was miserable. It was winter and I was alone and I missed home and I was miserable.
A bit of nostalgia.
Yeah.
Longing.
Yes, and I had just had a conversation with my family over Christmas and I could hear laughter, back. I was talking to my mom and I could hear people laughing and, I was imagining the sunshine.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I might have shed a tear or two. And I was talking to a friend in the US. I told him I want to write about all the things I hate about being London, all the things that are making me miserable. He said, why don't you instead write things that you miss about Nairobi? And I'm like, okay, so I took a notebook and started writing. Then, I don't know, I kept writing days and months. And the next thing I was like, this could be a book. And I started writing. So it took me many, many, many years to finish that.
Understood. Mm-hmm. In my researches, you are a self-publisher.
Correct.
Now, before on this forum, we've mentioned this word self-publishing. It seems to be the way to go, particularly as our own publishers aren't prepared to publish everything that puts in front of them. So I want to know, what do you do when you self-publish? And if it's not an absolute secret, could you mention money? How much does it cost?
It's not a secret at all. What you do as a self-published writer is you take 100% risk, financial, editorial, anything that happens in that book is your responsibility. So that means you have to finance it, you have to market it, you have to have it edited, and every little detail. How much does it cost? It depends on a number of factors, because it depends on how big the book is, the design of the cover, the inside. If you want to go to down River Road, which is cheaper, or uptown somewhere, which is more expensive, are you willing to pay an editor? Are you willing to pay designers? So there's a lot of things. But I would say, on average, and this takes a wide range of books, because we can be from 100 book page to maybe 400. I would say it would be between 200 to 400 per book.
400,000?
No, well, I'm talking about per book. Like,
okay.
It would take, would cost like 400 shillings to print.
Depending, that's the range.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things to consider.
So what's your print run?
What's my what?
Your print run. You've told us how
it depends.
I'm told that everybody goes for 3,000.
Not
to make
everybody.
a cost on returns, because the more you print, the cheaper it becomes.
It is the cheaper.
3,000 copies of Cocktail from the Savannah?
No, they're not. I won't tell you how much, but I will tell you that it's not many people who have the guts to do 3,000 copies.
But you're not, the whole game of revelation is that you're not telling anybody how to be Ciku, Kimani, Mwaniki.
No.
So it's a complete secret to know what your print run might be. Do you go back to the publisher and say, I want 100 more?
Yes.
What's the plan?
Yes, usually you do that. The idea would be to do maybe 10,000 copies, because then that would cost you 100 shillings, maybe for this one, and then it would make you more money.
Yes.
But there's also the risk that you'll never be able to sell those 10,000 books, and then you wouldn't make any money at all.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will take a risk with between 500 and 1,000. I know that's what I do. So it's either 500 or 1,000.
Okay, understood.
Yes.
So what have I now? Is there somebody out there whom you can lead us to who is the editor saint of all self-publishers? Otherwise, you are going to write your book, assume that it's absolutely wonderful, and you haven't got a critical eye telling you to get rid of chapter 3. Which is what editors do on a clear day.
Yes. For starters, I think I'm getting better with the editor thingy. Nairobi Cocktail, I did not have it edited. Nairobi Cocktail is like publishing first draft. So it's got things, I would rather that one not there. So I did not. Number 2, Immigrant Cocktail, I went the next step and got somebody to look at it. They still miss things. With this one, I still did not get an editor, but I got people who were doing an amazing job. I'm the wrong person to recommend an editor for anybody. I can't do that.
Okay, so the book's been published. You've got your 500 copies minimum. Are you one of these people who goes into the boot of your car with 100 copies in it and say, John, this is my book, please buy it, and it costs 800 bob. And then through sheer embarrassment and the fact that I've actually got 1,000 bob on my M-Pesa account, I have to buy your book. So in other words, you're bludgeoning all your friends and relatives to buy your book.
No, I don't do that, because I hate it when people do that to me. I will carry books with me, but most of the time I take books to people who have ordered books. So I don't, and I'll tell people I'm a writer, but I won't tell them, okay, do you want to buy your book, my book? So the thing I am likely to do, the thing I have done is to tell people, if you ever want to read my book, this is, you can get in touch with me through social media. I prefer social media, and yeah, the next step. But no, I don't quote unquote force people to buy my book.
Publicity. Is that a budget item?
Social media is a blessing. It's a blessing to a lot of us, because I don't know what a lot of us would have done without social media. Because I can stand or sit and tell you that 80% of my sales have been through social media. Maybe the next 20% have been through recommendations. So I have people who have bought my book through social media, and then they've told somebody, oh, by the way, you need to read this one, you need to read this one. So it's word of mouth and social media, and then I'm hoping to go to the next step and get to TV stations and where I am. This is amazing, and newspapers and radio and all that. But for now, what I have is social media.
Right.
Yeah.
Social media is the one. Well,
yes.
I can announce at this forum that if you look at the banner behind me, one of our sponsors is Prestige Bookshop. They've got 2 outlets, one in the central business district of Nairobi and the other in an area of town called Lavington. And as sponsors, although you don't fall into their traditional feeder lane, which is the traditional publisher, we will have copies of Cocktail from the Savannah available at Prestige Bookshop for at least the next 2 months. Yay. And if they go like hotcakes, then good luck to you.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, Prestige.
Now, oh gosh, you didn't have to.
No, I wanted to.
Endorsing?
I wanted to.
Okay.
It's really good.
Right, okay. A multiple choice question that I'm going to give you. You remember the days when you were at school, you tick 1. I deliberately didn't give you an appellation at the beginning of the program. I didn't say detective writer, as has happened with one of our guests. I didn't say poet. I didn't say short story writer. So here's the multiple choice. Which would you, Ciku, Kimani, Mwaniki, tick against? Women's writer, feminist writer, romance writer, other type of writer?
Thank goodness there is the 4th one, because I think I'll take the 4th one. Why? Do you want to know why?
Yes, because that will lead me to my question as to why you write that kind of book.
Because I would rather not be pigeonholed as a romance writer. I do love writing about romance. I love a good love story, and but if I was called a romance writer, then one day I might want to write a detective book.
No, but you don't have to say that forever and a day. I'm just saying at this stage in your development, that's what you are now. You'll be a poet next week, that's allowed.
So
What's
we're
your
talking
label
about
for
right now?
Right now?
Right now is romance.
Right, romance. Falling in love, love, and more love. Who are you writing for? I'll tell you why. That's a trick question. When I was an 18-year-old, a 20-year-old, a 16-year-old, I went to that category of book because I want to learn vicariously what all this stuff was about. So if there was a novel that sort of said, and then he unbuttoned her bra, I got very excited. So are you expecting that Cocktail from the Savannah is going to be read by a whole bunch of high schoolers locked up in some school in, I don't know?
I think it will. I hope it is. I think it will also, because teenagers will read these things. We read even David Mailu, he hiding under, behind the house and reading what anyone to say. And we were teenagers, because that's just what teenagers do. They are curious. They want to know why this one I'm being told not to read. So,
but Ciku, I'm asking, are you writing for them? There's a demographic there. There's this group of people, Kenyan society has, what's the kind of trite observation? 60% of Kenyans are under the age of 30. Are you writing for them?
I would rather not say I'm writing for between 16 and 30. I would say I'm writing for 18 and above.
Right.
Yeah, I can imagine my mom reading it and blushing and wondering where her daughter learned all those things. But yeah.
But you're, again, you're a mother. You're a mother. You've got children. They're young now. This is perhaps an unfair question. They know that mum is a writer.
Absolutely.
And this stuff is sort of like not totally invisible in your household.
Oh, no, it's out there in the open.
Right. If they got a hold of Cocktail from the Savannah, would you say they're precocious, they're reading, they're learning huge vocabulary? Would you say go right ahead?
I would, and I hope my husband would agree with me. I think he would. But first, they're readers. They read and they read and they read. And they ask questions when they read. Yeah, they will ask something they don't understand.
Well, just to help make you happy, have you noticed my little badge here? It says,
a reader is a leader. That is absolutely amazing.
Right, so that is the message of
that is the
Mbogi
message.
MaWriters. We must read. And you don't care when that begins?
No, well, reading mine, I tell them, what I do tell them is I tell them that if it would be good if they waited until they're 16. But if they don't wait, I would not have a heart attack.
Right.
I would not have a heart attack, but the thing I would hope they would do is be honest that they're reading it. Then we can go through it together.
So you're not being a bit sort of judgmental about their spiritual lives and this is not fit for children's consumption. You're not a prude. You're not a prude.
No, no. I'd rather not be a prude because I don't want my kids not to read books because I told them to. I'd rather they decide for themselves the kind of work they don't want to read.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Okay. If I may read to you, we could have time for maybe 2 extracts. I'm going to go to chapter 11. It's chapter 11 of 19 chapters. And of course, you well know that you've got an epilogue, and the book has 352 pages. Again, we're talking to the person who wants to be Ciku, Kimani, and Mwaniki when he or she grows up. So here we are. We know it's romance and a bit of a blurb. The following day, Masi Konde, with Terian beside him, drove towards Kona Baridi. This place will always be special for me, he said, smiling because they were sharing a blanket, her head resting on his shoulder, sitting on the stones and listening to the whistling of the wind as it passed over the thorn trees. The woman sitting next to him was a far cry from the tense and scared girl he had taken there the first time. In place of her oversized clothes, she wore black tights and a fitting top. Her feet still had Bata Ngoma canvas shoes, but they were new. "Are you happy?" he asked after a long silence from both of them. She sighed. "I am happy, a little scared too." "Why are you happy?" She exhaled, looking up at the skies with a smile. "See that bird over there?" He looked up where she was looking. There was an eagle circling in slow motion. So many times I envied birds, how they could just free themselves from their problems, fly away. She turned to look at him and smile. "I now feel free because of you. You have done so much for us. I don't know what I would have done without you. I think we would all be dead." He shook his head. I think you're a very strong girl, and somehow you would have found a way. She shook her head. Only she knew that she had reached the end of her tether. Only she knew that she had seriously considered, even though for a guilty minute, killing Saitoti, then killing herself and Lemayan. He pulled her closer. Besides me helping you, do I make you happy? Of course, I'm so happy. Do I make you happy enough to want to be my wife? Well, without too much of a spoiler, there is a bit of a twist to that wonderful romantic moment, because she has a husband and he has a wife.
Ooh.
So there we go from there. That's what's going to scintillate us for the pages that remain. Now, without having this conversation, leading people to the book, our audience is very inspired. They've got some idea of, as they say in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, they know where you're going with this, honey. They know where you're going with this. So I want to look at those. Remember, we promised ourselves so many minutes into our conversation that we would discuss plot and characterization. And if you remember the kind of school debates that you used to have, one side of the auditorium would say, the Oxford Dictionary defines, and then they would get stuck up in definitions. So maybe you have a different definition of plot, but our dear friend Wikipedia offers this. Plot. In a literary work, the plot is the sequence of events where each affects the other, that is, a succession of important actions which have consequences within the story. Would you agree with that definition as a writer?
Yes and no. Because I deal with the kind of writers, the kind of characters that are dictators. So I have an idea of what I want to write. Then I have the beginning. And then as I'm writing, I realize I'm not even going to where I wanted to go. And the character has like taken over and they want to be this person who, you know, it's confusing actually.
So are you saying very politely that you make it up as you go along?
Yes. Quite
my goodness,
honestly,
that's a
I never
terrible
even
admission.
know how the story ends. I know it will be a good ending, but why that happens is I love working with the quote-unquote damaged characters. I don't do Miss Goody Two Shoes, for lack of better expression. I love working with the people you see on the street. You know, somebody who has mental issues, maybe somebody who has an issue with violence, maybe somebody who's been abused, somebody who's...
Real people.
Yeah, real people. So I don't like sanitized characters. And when you're dealing with that kind of damaged humans, you can't really plan because you don't know the day they'll have a down moment. So yeah, like I say, I make it up as I write.
Another definition, then we can sort of mix the two conversations because they're linked. Your story is rolling along and you introduce a character, and therefore we have to deal with characterization. Another definition, after introducing a character, the writer continues to give insights into his or her behavior and motivation. So they can decide to go and stab somebody in the marketplace, but then what was going on in their minds. And at the root of this preoccupation for a writer is the idea of creating credible characters. If we can't believe in them, then we can't believe in the story. So you've just said that you don't sort of lose too much weight about the plot. But then I'll ask you, when do you decide that it's time to stop? Because if you've got 352 pages, then you could go on for 1,000. And in terms of plotting, do you make it more and more convoluted? You think just as they're getting off the plane, a Saudi Arabian prince comes and proposes to her, then she doesn't like. Is that what's happening?
No, no. I stop when they stop. It's very difficult to explain, but there's a point that reaches, and you're like, you know what?
I'm going to press. It's difficult to explain what you do.
Yeah, because okay, I'll try. I'll give it my best shot.
I think that's the wrong answer.
I'll give it my best shot.
Yeah.
A character gets exhausted in my head. You know, I feel like that's it. I've squeezed the juice out of that character. You know, like if I'm going to say anything else about them, if I'm going to make them do something else, either I'm going to make them repeat something they did at the beginning of the book, or it's not adding any value to the whole story. So they get exhausted, and you're like, okay, maybe it's time to start wrapping up. Yeah? And that's when I wrap up. So when I wrap up, then I get people like my lovely husband and ask him, could you read this and tell me if I'm passing a message?
Well, we'll return to the lovely husband in a bit, because we're going to say, is this for women or is this for men? But before we get there, Masikonde is Maasai.
He is.
So, to the best of my knowledge, you are not Maasai.
No, I'm not.
So what gives you the wherewithal, with all this was about difference in our unity, building bridges, whatever else we're trying to do, what gives you the nerve to go and immerse yourself and suddenly in Maasai culture?
Building bridges. Building bridges does not mean that we forget.
It means that probably we're different.
Absolutely, we are different, and I love the differences because but the differences are what make us interesting. You know, like.
No, I'll go back. Why did you decide to go to Maasai?
Because the Maasais have managed to hold on to a lot of their culture, much more than a lot of the tribes in Kenya, and I needed to write a story that I can use. You know, I can use traditions and culture to tell an African romance. So the Maasai came in naturally. It was either the Maasai or the Turkana.
Right.
Yeah, because using a Kikuyu or a Luya was not going to work.
Right. That's a good cue for me, because I'm going to have another burst of your writing. I hope everybody's riveted to this conversation. Here we go. And so this is Terrian in this love triangle, the wife talking to the husband, and we've actually gone back in time. We're on chapter something, we're on page 26, but you're setting us up. And she nudged, and he wants us to have a child. The protagonist's father wants the son to have a child with this woman, and she seems to have been taking her time about it. And he wants us to have a child. He averted his eyes from her challenging ones and picked his sandwich, attempted to have a bite, then put it back on the plate and slumped back on the seat, looking up at the ceiling in frustration. She let out a bitter laugh. What does he think we should do? Have more sex? Sinta. It did not matter that he had thought the same thing, but coming from Sinta caught him upshot. He was not armed for the current Sinta. He cupped his mouth with his hands and shut his eyes. She got off her seat and went to the window, peering through the clear drapers into the darkness. Let's not beat around the bush, Masi. I know our situation bothers other people more than it bothers the two of us. So please do not insult my intelligence by skirting the issue. Does he want you to take another wife? he opened his eyes, but instead of looking at her, he focused on the half-eaten sandwich. I take that as a yes. Look, you and I are Maasai. This kind of thing should not be uncomfortable. He looked at her under his brow. Meaning? She shrugged, still looking away. Meaning, if you want to take another wife, you can take another wife. Cinder. He got up, opening his arms to hug her. She stopped him with a hand gesture. Don't. I do not want another wife. Why not? Because you are enough for me. She smirked. What difference does it make if you take another extra wife or 3? You sleep around anyway. Making it official may be the better option. Oh goodness, we African Kenyan men are coming out looking really bad on page 26.
Surprise, surprise.
Is this the way we are?
Surprise, surprise.
Is this the way
well,
we
yeah.
get?
I will not do a blanket statement and say it's Kenyan men, but we do have a lot of people who are like that. And it's not just Kenyan, may I just say that quickly? But yeah, we have such characters who only want the perfect family of mother, father, children, hopefully, but out there.
Understood.
Yeah.
We must move on. Our 45 minutes are being chewed up. It seems to me, Ciku, that in terms of characterization, the woman, spoiler alert, the woman whom the man chooses it's unlikely that a man of that sophistication would throw his weight around a woman simply because of her beauty.
I know,
I seem to think there are lots of beautiful women that I encounter on a daily basis. Yeah. But I don't sort of say, oh my gosh, I've got to take this one, spruce her up, and marry her.
That's why you gotta believe in love at first sight.
Okay. So that's what you're saying. In
That is what I'm trying to say.
In this particular romance, there's love at first sight.
I think there's love at first sight. Yes, there is love at first sight, and
but his wife isn't a pushover either.
No, she's not.
So everybody says, "Oh, you're really beautiful, Ciku." No, you're much more beautiful than I am. So that these women are
absolutely
hot.
different.
These women are hot.
Yeah.
So you're saying that the impetus in the plot is that one is less desirable because she can't have a baby.
Absolutely not. No, because if that were true, then he would have walked away a long time ago.
So what is true? Love at first sight?
I think it's possible for some people to fall in love with more than one person. It is possible for some people to allow their husbands to marry another wife. It's a debate I would like to hear repeated. I would rather people like Sita say, don't skirt around the issue.
Yeah, but Ciku, you know when we went back and I gave you the multiple choice, your sisters of a certain persuasion are going to sort of like doing, vomiting on their shoes or whatever people do when they're annoyed. Because you're letting the women's side down. Here we are supposedly advancing all these years. One man, one wife, till death
It's never worked. It's never worked for some people. It's not going to work.
Okay.
So people need to accept that there are people who it's just not going to work for.
Okay.
Yeah?
So as a manifestation of our culture,
yes,
you're saying every woman in this audience should go and get married in the expectation that they should expect their husbands on day one.
Absolutely not. And that is why
but it's a dream.
That is why I got Cinta to have a discussion, because I think you can't just come from somewhere and bring a wife in the house and tell the wife, okay, here's your co-wife. Right. I think it's a process. I think it's a discussion. Right. I think it's, things that should be put on the table.
Understood.
Exactly.
Understood. I'll still go back to the woman he falls for, because our topic is characterization. There's a line where you would say, do you know how to use the dishwasher?
Yeah.
Or you'd better go and have a massage. Or would you like a glass of wine, darling? This woman whom Masikonde has found knows nothing about these things. That would somehow, speaking as a man, and with your lovely husband as an editor, are we men sold on this characterization?
Are you? You tell me, are you?
I think that if I was going to find a really beautiful woman, she would be a beautiful woman who did know how to use a dishwasher.
But having to use a dishwasher doesn't make anyone beautiful. It's just a skill.
She goes out for the first time. She goes to a nightclub for the first time. Isn't there, for you as a writer, shouldn't there be some brain chemistry going on between your characters? Or is it they got into bed and made torrid love?
Is that what they did? That's not what they did.
They seem to get into bed and make torrid love
well,
quite often.
They do make some beautiful love, and quite often, as people in love should.
Right.
But I think there is much more to that. It's not that simple. I'm wondering what to say without spoiler alert, because I don't want to spoil for people. But
don't say anything, and then they can just go and buy the book.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one solution.
But I would say
they're really keen
first
as it is. They're
because,
fascinated.
It's because Masikonde understands Tyrion.
Right.
Because he's lived that life.
Right.
So to him, Tyrion is not some sort of
Ciku, Masikonde is 35.
Yeah.
He's 35 and he's like a multi-millionaire.
That he
At
is.
half my age, he seems to have made 10 times the money. Where did he get his money from? So is that...
I can't tell you that, because then I'll be telling the...
I didn't quite know where he got his money from. I know he was successful.
Read it again.
Yeah,
you missed something. It's
okay,
there.
Okay.
Yeah, it's there.
Oh my goodness, I got 0 out of 10 for character moment.
It's
okay,
there.
so we're going on. He's got a father who wants him to get married. Going to Tyrion, there is, again, spoiler alert, in her baggage, she has cause to have a terrible guilt complex because she is having an affair with a very rich man when her own family is going through the sort of ringer. So the question for you in terms of characterization is, do you set out to make some of these characters sympathetic? I'm trying to think whom I really liked in this story.
Sympathetic.
To the reader.
To the reader.
Because you're sitting there, you know, concocting
What
away.
I know I've done is I have tried not to make any of my characters saintly.
So you said that?
Yeah. I cannot, because it wouldn't hit it for me.
Right.
So how the readers find the character, because some characters, some readers are empathizing with the Tyrion, others with Sainta. So there's that decision. Others are like, oh, Masikonde, and it's both men and women. There are women who are like, yeah, Masikonde.
Right.
There are men who are like, that's what I'd like to be. So yeah, I leave that to the reader.
Peripheral characters. They're not as many as we've had before on Mbogi's, but you've got quite a few. And it seems to me that they were just making, in a Shakespearean play, they would come in holding the sword and, you know, sort of say, Caesar, enter, left. But, so why are they there?
Like who?
Because I would say that Tyrion's parents.
Because they
Saitoti's parents. There's a reconciliation, but in the 300 pages, they were disgruntled and everything, no spoiler. But as a writer, aren't there some characters who ultimately are superfluous? And you could be a tighter writer if you got rid of them. If you sort of arrange for them to jump off a cliff, then they'd be out of the way.
I remember a long time ago, somebody I respect highly in writing, as a writer, as a journalist, and he told me people kill characters when they don't know what to do with them anymore. It's lazy writing. So first, that is in my head, that it's kind of lazy writing, unless I was set out to kill that character from the word go. And then I get very attached to characters. So I have a problem killing characters. I'm sorry. I cry.
Oh yeah, time is not on our side. Time is not on our side. Here are my notes. Here are my notes. I'm going to say dialogue and description. Dialogue and description. So many times, having said that love is a good thing to have, you've used the formula, they made love, and left it at that. So we've got dialogue and we've got description. Are you not, your dialogue is very strong, people sort of chatting away. Is description a weakness for you? And is every writer meant to be as good at both? I think we could devote a Mbogi with a writer just to this topic in more detail. So we're doing characterization and plot. Where do you think your strengths lie?
I believe my strength is dialogue. So you're right there. I wouldn't say I struggle with description, but yeah, I need to work on that.
Right.
But
well, I'll tell you another anecdote from my youth. When I was really little as a precocious child, one of the things that my father brought into our household was James Baldwin's Another Country. And I still remember to this day that somewhere, so I must have been young, 10, but I thought if it's good enough for Dad, it's good enough for me. And of course you read when Dad and Mum were not there. So I was going through segment. And Baldwin sort of says, and she carried him like a boat would be carrying somebody on the sea.
Right, nice one.
Bobbing gently, whatever. And as a 10-year-old, I was saying, yeah, I'd like some of that one day. But you know what I'm saying? But you in particular, don't take us. It seems that unlike some writers that we've had here, you don't go along that route. Why not?
I don't think it's something I've done deliberately, not to go that route. But I also think it's got to do also with, because I might be writing fictional characters, but I'm still me. It's still me writing.
Right.
So I'm the kind of person who sort of doesn't do...
Okay.
So I'll tell you.
Yeah.
You had sex. You know, we had sex.
Yeah.
You know,
work it out in your own mind. The power of suggestion. Okay, we have to go to the ritual questions for the end, 1 minute each. The standard questions, what do you read? Ciku, Kimani, Mwaniki.
I love reading fiction, so I'll read fiction, I'll try fiction from every angle. I'm loving the new crop of Kenyan writers especially, so my library has been growing and growing with the Kenyan writers.
Name names. Give them a plug. We need to give each other a plug.
Where do I start? We have Jacob Aliet is launching a book next week, by the way. No, next week, no, tomorrow, but the day after tomorrow or something. We've got Zipi-Okot, we've got Caroline Allegre, we've got Tony Mochama, of course. We've got, you know, these Ndoshongo.
Kenyans are writing.
Yes,
Kenyans are writing. When do you read, and why do you think it is important to read?
I read mostly when I'm in a matatu. I love riding in matatus because I get to read without worrying about timing, and because with the children and me being the one who takes care of them, then I find it hard to find time to read. And when they're in school, that's the time I take to write. So I take the time to read in a matatu. And why do I read? Because I don't think any writer should ever say they don't read, because you open your mind to, you know, new things, new suggestions, new ways of writing, and you pick things and you get motivated as well. Like if I read a good written book.
Last question, Mbogi, MaWriters, why do you write?
Because I have stories to tell. I have stories to tell, and I prefer to write them.
Good answer, and a good place to stop. I think that we should stand to thank our audience, but before I do so, I have to say to you once again that this is coming to you from the Multimedia Library of the Alliance Française de Nairobi. À la prochaine, till next time. Let's stand to thank our audience.
Congrats.